Welcome back to the Explanation Pro. Today I'll recap a comedy, drama, romance film called The Late Bloomer. Spoilers incoming. Dr. Peter Newmans, a 30-year-old sex therapist, is having an ordinary day at work. He's having a one-on-one sit-down talk with a patient about her obsessive sexual desires. Then he asks her to read his book and explains how it can help her rechannel her negative sexual impulses. After work, while Peter is on his way home, he constantly notes what he'll put in the next chapter of his book. When he reaches his building, Josh, his young friend, greets him about how he took his advice regarding her crush, Becky. After their conversation, Peter enters his home and unexpectedly sees his two friends, Rich and Luke, watching a movie. Peter says they need to learn to text him before coming over and that the key he gave them is for emergency use only. Luke then says it's an emergency fun time with them because he's tired of looking after his kids, and Rich says that his excuse is his ex-girlfriend is getting her things at his place. Peter then tells his friends that he has to leave because he promised to go to Michelle's, who lives next door and has people over to try out her new dish. Rich immediately asks him if there are hot girls in the event and wants to join, but Peter says he doesn't want to help him cheat. Instead, Peter offers Luke, who's heartbroken now, to join. But because Luke is so invested in Tinder, he declines his offer, and Peter then goes to the party alone. After that, Peter arrives at Michelle's and immediately looks for her. He finds Michelle working on her new dish in the kitchen, and she then asks him to taste his new dish. Then, he tries to convince her to start now so she'll have her restaurant, but Michelle says she still needs to be ready. While conversing over a glass of wine, Peter experiences a slight headache. Michelle offers her medicine, but he says it's just a typical headache. Then, Charlie, Michelle's boyfriend, interrupts them and apologizes to Michelle for working that night even though he promised he wouldn't work. The following day, Peter visits his parents' house and her mother, Brenda, welcomes him with his favorite brownies. Brenda asks about his work and then shares how she helped Carmen's problems with her husband's needs using the book Peter wrote. Brenda then tells him that she worries about Peter working a lot and that he has no time for a girlfriend, then Peter leaves. After Peter leaves, Brenda talks with James, her husband, about his negativity towards Peter and asks him to accept Peter for who he is. Besides, he's very successful. James then says he doesn't know who Peter is because he's not the man he tried to raise him to be. James also thinks Peter is gay because he writes a book about sex but never has a girlfriend. Meanwhile, Caroline, the head of the office where Peter works, delivers the good news to Peter that he's doing a NED Talk. Caroline continues to say that she submitted him and his book, and they accepted them. She then says that Noema Wilcoxon from NPR wants to interview him about Caroline and what they do in their clinic. In awe of the news, Peter thanks Caroline for all her support. Later that day, when Peter arrives at his building, he sees Michelle breaking up with Charlie. He then knocks on Michelle and takes the opportunity to comfort her. She offers him white wine while she talks about her relationship with Charlie and how she feels alone because Charlie is so invested in his work and himself. She also says that Charlie's work isn't a big deal, but she just got tired of being an afterthought. Later, they continue the conversation on the couch, where Peter tells her comforting words. Michelle then tells him she already knows what she needs now, to become a chef. She continues to say that she wants to divert her sadness into something she wants to do. Michelle thanks him for always being there for her and then kisses him in her vulnerability. Suddenly, Peter experiences a headache, and because he thinks it's because of the wine, he decides to leave. After that, Peter is alone in his house and wonders what's wrong with him because he has been getting a few awful migraines. The following day, Rich and Luke wake him up and tries to persuade him to join them at their weekend basketball game. Peter says he has a bad headache and asks them to leave, but Rich says that he left her wife and kids at home to play with them, so there's no way he's going home without them playing basketball. Despite not feeling well, he agrees to go with them. Then, a doorbell interrupted them, and Luke thought Peter had ordered food. They immediately go to see who's ringing and surprisingly see Michelle. She talks to Peter, thanking him for the comfort last night, and apologizes when she kisses him. On the other hand, his friends are watching them from the peephole. Later, while Peter and his friends are walking, they ask Peter to try it on Michelle since she's fresh from a breakup. But Peter says he doesn't want to take advantage of the situation and believes she needs kindness. Rich and Luke continue to convince him, but he says she confides in him because she trusts him. At Michelle's apartment, her friend Nikki is talking about a 9-day vacation in Santa Barbara, which will start Michelle's career. Michelle says that Nikki sounds like Peter, so Nikki tells her she thinks he's a serial killer. She says it's because he's always sneaking around the apartment, and how he looks at Michelle isn't a sign of love but a way to watch her every move. Still, Michelle explains that he's very kind and genuine and that when she's around him, she feels safe because when she kissed him last night, he didn't take advantage of that. Afterward, Peter, Rich, and Luke continue their basketball game, where Peter is accidentally hit in the groin and falls to the ground, causing him to attend an emergency room. His friends say he might have hit his head, so the doctor orders a CT scan, followed by an MRI to check for internal bleeding. Peter claims his head is fine, but the doctor says they need to be sure and do a quick examination. The nurse starts his initial physical examination and discovers Peter's underdeveloped testicles, causing the doctor to become increasingly concerned. After the MRI, the doctor reveals that they found some rather serious MRI results. They found a brain tumor that, although it's benign, it's pretty sizable. The doctor says that it's pressed up against his pituitary gland, causing his body to produce the female hormone prolactin, blocking his normal male development. The doctor also claims that it might have been there for many years because they only found a little testosterone, indicating that he never went through puberty. After hearing the news, instead of Peter being worried about it, he felt happy because, through the years, he thought he was a freak and that there was some anomaly. He then asks the doctor what they will do next. The doctor tells him they can easily remove the tumor through his nose. Peter is happy about it, so he insists that the doctor do the procedure immediately. Later, Peter calls his friends and informs them of the situation. Luke then asks him why he didn't tell them he felt like a freak before. Then Rich also asks him if he was scared when puberty didn't happen to him. Peter explains his concerns that people would discover he had never gone through puberty and had never had an erection. When his friends question if he considered consulting a doctor, he replies that he never disclosed his illness to a medical. After all, he was afraid because he wanted to be normal and couldn't let a doctor destroy his hope. After a successful excision, he stays with his parents to recover. Later, his friends visit him and ask him how his recovery is going. Peter says that he's starting to worry that the surgery might not have worked because he still feels the same way as before. His friends then show him they brought him a stripper named Montana to make him experience an erection. However, despite Montana's performance, Peter still doesn't feel anything, so he apologizes to Montana. Later that night, Peter receives a message from Michelle. She says she hasn't seen him for a couple of days and thinks he's avoiding her, but Peter says he only has a family emergency. The following day, his mother sees him erect when he goes down to eat breakfast. Peter immediately runs to his room, screams happily, and then goes home. When he gets home, he's surprised to see Luke inside with a woman. Luke then notices he's got an erection, so he takes a picture and sends it to Rich. After that, Peter experiences his first masturbation and can't stop doing it. The next day, he goes out with his friends, talks about his situation, and says that he wants to be with Michelle now but worries that she's not into him. Later that day, Michelle goes to him to tell him that she has to go to Santa Barbara. She says she got accepted into a new program Bobby Flay is sponsoring and thanks him because if it weren't for him, she wouldn't be on her path to becoming a chef now. Meanwhile, in Peter's work, he finds it hard to concentrate on talking with his patients because he gets aroused whenever they share their stories. The following day, he wakes up with severe acne on his face and goes to see his doctor to ask for help because he has acne, mood swings, and intense sexual desires. His doctor says it's happening to him at a highly accelerated speed because he didn't experience puberty for the past 15 years. Not long after, Michelle comes to his apartment to say her goodbyes. She asks if Peter's doing okay because he seems to be avoiding her and has acted differently since returning from his family emergency. Peter then says that they have a lot to talk about when she comes back. After Michelle leaves for a cooking retreat, his symptoms become progressively more severe. While playing with Josh, he receives a FaceTime call from Michelle, talking about her experiences in the camp. When she starts mentioning Bobby Flay, he lashes out because of his unfamiliar feelings of jealousy. Then, at NPR, his most awaited interview with Noema is happening. Unfortunately, he can't do the interview properly because of his voice changes caused by puberty. After that, he went to his parents' house to talk about what he had been experiencing lately. His parents tell him that everything he's experiencing right now is normal, but in the end, he acts out. The following day, he and his friends are walking to their basketball game when Rich asks him a favor to babysit for him on their anniversary. Peter, who doesn't have a choice, agrees to do it. Then, when they're on the basketball court, Peter puts up an attitude causing a little heat between them and their opponents. In the evening, Josh and Peter go out to get dinner, and Peter talks about asking Michelle out once she returns. Josh gives Peter advice to show Michelle he knows how to deal with women, so Peter goes to a dating app and starts hooking up with different girls. After Michelle returns, Peter asks her on a date, and she agrees. While preparing, Rich calls and asks him where he's because he's supposed to babysit for him. Even if Rich is begging him to babysit, he says that he wants to do something for himself and that it's his shot with Michelle. Then, he and Michelle went to Monte Grappa for their dinner date. Michelle starts their conversation by telling her experience with Bobby, which leads to Peter's jealousy causing him to act weird. Moments later, Rich and his wife come to them, revealing that Peter broke a promise to his best friend and stole their table reservation. Peter then starts a scene in the restaurant, causing Michelle to leave. After what happened during their dinner date, Peter becomes depressed and tries to receive oral sex from one of his patients. Caroline catches them and immediately asks him to meet him in her office. Caroline is concerned because if word gets out about what he's doing, it could hurt the clinic's reputation, which is a big deal since their NED talk is coming soon. Peter tries to explain his issues, but Caroline fires him. Peter has to face the reality of his situation, so he goes to his parents' house later that night and has a heart-to-heart with his father over what it means to be a man. When he asks his father what he needs to do with the NED talk, his father advises him to look them in the eyes and tell them the truth. On the day of his NED talk, Peter talks about his anti-sex book, and suddenly, he stops. He continues to speak that he talked with his father last night and realizes that he must tell his reader the truth. So, he concluded that people should be able to have as much consensual sex as they want and that society should cease to sex shame individuals. On Rich's daughter Delaney's birthday, Peter attends and apologizes to Rich and his wife, admitting he was wrong and that what he did was selfish. After their reconciliation, Peter told them that Michelle had gotten back together with Charlie. Jenny, Rich's wife, then tells Peter that Michelle has won the sous chef spot for Bobby Flay and that the restaurant will open next week. Jenny then tells him to go there and apologize to her like a man. But Peter says that he knows how to be a man and will do what she wants, not what he wants. Eventually, Peter goes to the restaurant's opening and apologizes to Michelle. Still, she insists that she has already moved on and then asks him to leave. Peter is about to leave when his friends tell him he'll not go unless he tells Michelle the truth. So, Peter then starts speaking publicly about all his experiences. Michelle then breaks up again with Charlie and goes to Peter. Moments after, he writes a book for teenage boys about how to become proper men. Then he goes on a book signing with his parents and Michelle, who's pregnant. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.